Hey, so this is Lauren Hollows, and it's been a couple of weeks, but I wanted to have a chat with you guys because we've had lots of meetings lately with SMS providers, e-learn providers, and regulators. And so now that we're starting to get back and move into that transition of face-to-face training, and also starting to look at everything and just digest everything that's happened over the last couple of months. There's a couple of points that I really wanted to make sure that RTOs were understanding, and also just things that we need to keep checking on as the next couple of weeks occur. So every state is in different positions, and obviously those RTOs that are national are going to be dealing with a huge amount of challenges, just logistical challenges in relation to making sure that your policies and procedures for things like occupational health and safety and returning students back into face-to-face training are going to meet those state-based requirements. And that's obviously going to be very dependent on industries too. So some of the things that I'm working with RTOs and I'm considering for the RTOs that I manage at the moment are things like looking at long-term work placements, how work placements are going to work, what industries are actually allowing work placements to occur, varying timelines for when we think other industries are going to start to allow. So, childcare, aged care, hospitality, all of these are fairly big areas where work placement is such a huge component. Work placement is going to continue to be a big focus for RTOs over the next coming months because of the challenges of employers not being able to take on people, the logistical insurance issues that are related to that. So some of the things that you want to be checking on is what your insurance situation is for students who are going out on placement, who's going to take responsibility for that, what checks are going to put in place. A lot of RTOs that I'm speaking with were also looking at developing COVID-safe declarations for employers. So for example, if you're going to be putting a student into placement, the Department of Education here in Australia is requiring that placement, that the employer basically declares that they're going to be able to provide a COVID-safe work environment. So some sort of documentation checklist that's going to be able to support that. And then just generally looking at what is actually going to be feasible. So, when we look at the international space, trying to find those work placements for international students in hospitality over the next couple of months, potentially even the next year, is going to be incredibly challenging. So, if you are marketing to international students and there's a requirement for you to be able to offer that work placement, how are you adapting your TAS? How are you adapting your marketing to make sure that what your marketing is accurate and that you can actually offer the services that you're marketing? And for your existing students, how are you communicating with them to talk to them about how you need to either adapt your service or how things are going to be changing to be able to accommodate what's happening in the market at the moment, and what sort of support services you can offer. Obviously, for anyone in the international space at the moment, there are huge issues for international students in relationship to them being financially viable, managing their accommodation, managing employment. They do fall very much in between the cracks of a lot of the schemes that have been put out at the moment. So some states have come up with some accommodations for that, but the vast majority yet have not. So looking at your policies for how you manage your fees, looking at your compelling and compassionate grounds, and really looking at what is compelling and compassionate. I mean, if this whole situation doesn't meet compelling and compassionate, I don't know what does, but you still have to have that policy in place, and you still have to have a process for how you're going to manage all of that. So all of these things are going to be really, really important as we start to move forward. One of the other areas that we do need to start look at is now that some RTOs are starting to get a little bit of breathing room, is really looking at when you've made some major changes to the style of your delivery, where have we actually gone and updated this? So, in certain extreme situations, you should actually be reporting that to the regulator and updating them. For example, if you've never done face-to-face, if you've never done online or blended training before, and you've gone from being an entirely paper-based face-to-face RTO to now doing 90% of your delivery online, you actually need to be, kind of notifying and updating the regulator of those sorts of things. You also need to be looking at how you've adapted your assessment tools. So I know that when I've been building assessment tools in our in the platforms that I work with, which is primarily Accelerate, so I've been making tweaks, like a lot of tweaks to the learner instructions, to the assessor instructions, to the way the question is framed, to how the assessment is undertaken, to how students need to go about reappealing, reassessing, resubmitting additional evidence. All of these sorts of things require little changes. So, for a lot of RTOs, understandably, this was a huge, really for some RTOs, this was a really quick kind of get everything up online sort of deal. Were you just copying and pasting all of that? Do you now need to actually go back and look at it? A vast majority of the RTOs that I'm speaking to that have kind of made more of an investment in online are now looking at that as a long-term progression, particularly because of the way that a lot of learners engage. For learners that have got things like dyslexia and ADD, it can actually be easier to text the response than it can be to physically handwrite it. So there's a lot of benefits that come with being able to offer paper-based versus electronic, that can be submitted via a lot of devices and things like that. So that's all well and good, but you do actually need to be spending the time to make sure that that assessment has been contextualized correctly, to make sure that the instructions are correct. Go through and actually look at what the learner is seeing, from that learner user side portal. Make sure it makes sense. Go back and talk to your trainers and, what are the major issues that they're having. If you're transitioning, to online and now you're transitioning back to face-to-face, how are you communicating that with your learners? How are you adapting your TASs? How are you making sure that you're doing this in a way that has got the learner at the heart of it? At the end of the day, we have a student-based audit. We have a student-centered, a student-focused audit model. So when we make all of these transitions, we need to make them thinking about how we're going to adapt for a student as well. And a really simple example of that, I know that I've worked with when we've been updating assessments, we've made an update to an assessment, and the admin or someone has gone and gotten really excited and taken that live, but without thinking about, hold on, well, now the student's got 2 assessments there, or did we give students enough time to finish assessments in one system before we made the update on it? So really thinking about that communication and how you're contextualizing your assessments for the learner is going to be really, really important. So we're starting to get some breathing space now. The regulator, it has definitely been trying to come out with support to that effect. I think on the 11th of May, many of you would have gotten an email from Saxon Rice. This has got a link to an environmental scan, particularly asking questions about, how your RTO has had to adapt to COVID-19. And to, a range of other issues in our industry. That's actually all that information is being collated by another provider. I think it's called AILS or something along those lines. So all the information that you get from your link goes to this secondary provider. They review all of the information and they send the overall feedback through to ASQA. So none of the information that you identify in that link is actually going to get back to ASQA specifically. They've done that so that RTOs can feel comfortable in being really honest about their feedback. So I do really encourage all of you to participate in that. It would have been an email probably to your CEO on the 11th of May. Check it out. Go make comments, give your feedback. It's really, really important to be an active participant in the process. So if you've got any questions in relation to what you should be doing, how you can be adapting, please feel free to email me through or comment on this link. I will hopefully do another one of these in about a week's time. And I want to talk to you guys more about how you're utilizing your SMS systems in the times of Corona, as it were. So hopefully come and check that out. Otherwise, if you've got any other questions, you guys know you just email me through. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.